Hi, everyone, and welcome to another the end of our series of webinars for the beginning of the year about Appery.io and all the different aspects of it. Today we'll be wrapping up our tour of the backend services. The final thing we'll be talking about the database. Of course, if you've been to our other webinars about backend services, we've kind of intertwined them anyway. This time the focus will be on the database feature itself, the feature of Appery.io providing you with your own NoSQL database for you to use in your apps. Back to you, Max.
Thank you, Charlie. So yeah, that's it sort of for our agenda. Very simple. All right, so let's go to the platform and then we'll start there. All right, now, so as you can see, I have database tab selected. So this is where you get, this is how you access the database. And so, I mean, the first thing is, what is this database? Well, it's a database for storing any app data, right? So you can store anything you need, users, products, purchases, orders. Again, whatever your app needs to store, you can store in the database, right? I mean, just in general, if you look at any mobile app, you install the app on your device, and then it talks to some backend or some server. And in many cases, there is a database, right? And so that's exactly what this database is for, right? Storing anything you need for the app. Now, one thing I also want to mention is it's a cloud database, right? Which means it's running on the cloud. It's not a local database that you can get on the phone. You can also access that, but it's separate. It's just a different type of a database, right? This one is running in the cloud. Now, how do you access the database? Is the database exposes REST APIs, and that's how you access the database. And so I already have one database right here, but just really quickly to show you, if you need to create a new database, that's extremely simple. I'm just going to go back to the list of all the databases that I have, and basically all you need to do is say my new database for webinar, right? A webinar, click create, and instantly you get a new database. So that's as simple as that. And again, you can create any number of databases that you need, right? For example, you can have one database for development, maybe one database for testing, maybe another database for production. So it's very flexible. But let's go back to this database. All right. So when you create a database, you get predefined collections out of the box, right? And the users collection has basically can hold users for your app, right? And so what this means is that you can have a functionality where you create users, right? You register for your app, and then users can do login, they can do logout, and so on. So this is basically user management that you get out of the box. Now, the actual users collection, it looks something like this, right? So there is the username and password. These are default columns, and then you can create also any number of other columns as well. But again, this is something you get out of the box. All right, the files collection, again, it's kind of obvious, right? Is for storing files, and then devices collection is for keeping device registration specifically for push notifications. And we actually, our last webinar, or the one before, push, and we have a recording.
And you were using the database feature to show this feature.
We have a recording on our YouTube channel, but so when you send a push message, the platform looks up the registrations here. Now, these are just sample numbers. These are not the actual registration. This is not the actual device ID. And then so the platform can use this information to send a push message. But what you can also do is you can send targeted push messages, and this is where we're using channels, right? So for example, you can say that in the app itself, maybe channel number 3 is to get notifications about new features that you guys are releasing in your app. So if the user subscribes to that channel, then you can send a targeted push message and say, you know what, I only want to send this update to people who subscribe to this channel, right? Or for example, if someone subscribed to channel 1, right? So in this case, you're going to only send the push message to this particular device, right? So again, this table holds information about your registered devices specifically for push. And then there are many different ways you can send targeted push messages. The channels are just one way. There are many other different ways you can target. So that's what this collection is for. Now, you can also, of course, create, and that's probably you're gonna have probably at least one, a custom collection, right? And a custom collection or a table is basically for anything you guys need. So to create a new collection, my new collection, right? And it has a few default columns, the ID, the ACL. I'm going to cover ACL in just a second, and then the dates, right? But then you can create custom columns, of course. So, for example, it's a product name, right? Now, as for the types, again, there are different types that are available. Obviously, there is string, number, Boolean, date, array. So these are kind of self-explanatory. Now, a pointer allows you to point to another collection. So in a way, so this allows you to do kind of a joint. Now, just to give you some technical background, the database that we use is a MongoDB database. So it's a NoSQL database. So it works a little bit different than a traditional relational database. Okay, so for example, to do a joint, you could use a pointer, right? And also just to throw it there, if you guys do have a relational database, an existing one that you would like to use, then you can use API Express to connect to the relational database and expose it via REST APIs. And we also had a webinar maybe a month ago or so, which talks about connecting to a relational database. All right, you can also keep an object. A geopoint is basically a latitude and a longitude information. And then a file, it will point to a file in the files collection. So as you can see, there are different data types, right? So you're not just limited to just a basic string value, right? Now, once you add a column, it's also very easy to add sample data. You just click plus row and say, maybe right, webinar, and then just click outside, and then it automatically inserts the ID, right? So this is how it works. Now, as I already mentioned, the database is automatically exposed via REST APIs, and then you can see there is a REST API section. You can also hide it if you want. That shows you the curl command, right? And this is very easy if you want to test maybe from a command line, or maybe you've got some other tool that you can do REST API requests. So you can just kind of check and test this particular collection. Now let's go to the one to data, and I have a list here of various tools that you guys probably using in your at work. So again, same thing. You get you get the API help section. What you also get is kind of pretty nice, is because you can get a query. So you can actually run queries, right? And you can test queries right here. Right, so probably at some point your app is gonna have some capability where you search for some items in the database, and the database provides pretty extensive query capabilities. So you can search for various things and so on, and the query information is actually everything is in our Dev Center. And for example, just to give you an idea, so I'm going to go to Database REST API and queries. Right here. Oh, that's the wrong, here we go. So you can see queries. So there are very different queries you can run, right? You can queries on array values, pointer values, on string, and so on. You can do sort of location queries as well. So there's a lot of information in the Dev Center. But again, you can also test queries right here. For example, I mean, just a very simple one. Let's say I'm looking for all entries that have the word GitHub, right? So I can do GitHub, something like this, run the query, and actually two items, two objects that have obviously named GitHub, right? And you can say, you don't have to search for an exact word, right? You can say that maybe starts with letter G and so on, lowercase, uppercase, so very different, many different things you can do, but definitely use this because it's kind of it's very simple to test something that you need. A query that you're building. So, all right. So that's for the database. Now I also want to cover some of the security here and the ACL. But for that, what I'm going to do, actually, let me open the Apps tab. And I already have a database that I created before, so we'll just use this, sorry, not database, app. Let's just use this app. So the question is, how do you integrate the app with the database? Well, of course, one way is you can just create a REST service, right? And you just create one, and you just enter the URL, right? I showed you the REST API section, so you can get the URL. So you can definitely do that, but there is a simpler way to do that. And let's delete the service. From create new, we can go to database services, right? And you can select the database and automatically generate the services. So this is the database. And then what happens is this the one? No, it's just my app. I selected the wrong one. Here we go. And you automatically now can select which services you would like to generate. So at the top here, these are for user management. So for example, let's do login. And then here you can select for which collection. So we've got data. Let's say you want to do list maybe and create, right? All right. And you can see these services are automatically generated. So this is just a faster way to get them, and then you can just use them as any REST API, but of course in this case these services will talk to the Appery.io database. All right. You can, of course, when you open a service, everything is preset, right? The URL is set, the request, this one is a list, so it doesn't have any parameters, but then the response is all set, and of course you can also test. Oh, I made the collection secure. That's why we're getting there. But actually, that's exactly what I wanted to show you. You can test. I guess I was playing with it before, and let's go to.
No, it was all planned.
Let's go to security and permissions. Right. So by default, this option is off, right? And so let me show you. This is where you set the security. Basically, who can read and write. Or sorry, not who, but if the collection can be read and can be written to. Right, so you can create new data. So this is actually the default without this. Let me save. It might take a few seconds for it to get updated, but let's run this again. All right. So you can see now I'm getting all the information, right, because it doesn't require security. Now, sorry, here we go. Here. And again, to turn on security, I'm going to make it secure, right? And you guys already saw the message. But what this basically means is that you need to have an active user. An active user actually means the user has to be signed into the application to be able to view the information in this particular collection, right? So it's an extra security. Obviously, you also need the API key to the database, right? But again, you can add extra security by making the database collection secure. All right, let's go back and just give this a test. I think, again, it takes a few, maybe seconds or maybe a little bit more for the permission to get updated. So we'll try this. But you guys saw the error before. So now, let me see here. Here we go. All right. Now, how do we get a signed-in user? Well, that's why I created the login service, right? And I have one user in my database, and we can just basically test and get a session token for the user. So it's Alex2, and then the password is 123, right? And what you basically get is just the session token. That's what you need. So I'm going to copy the session token, right? And I'm going to take it to my service, and in request, in the headers, there's a session token, right, that I can set. So this is just obviously testing, right? And then go to test, and now this works because basically the user is now logged in, right? And that's how I can access this information. Now that we're talking about a session token, we can quickly go to settings, And then right here, you can actually set the expiration date for the session token. So again, it's very flexible. You can set it, minutes, hours, or days, right? And basically, this means that the session will be alive for that period of time.
Okay.
And then if there is no activity, the user doesn't do anything, right? There's no interaction between the app and the database or the backend in this case. Then the session expires and the user will need to log in again.
Okay.
So also on this page, you can also just export the data to JSON or .csv file. As for API keys, so this is there's one default API key that you get. You can also create additional API keys. So maybe test key for customer, right? And this is very easy if you want to give share maybe access, right? Have someone access the database. You can generate a key, right? And then you can remove it. Once you delete the key, that party will lose access to the database.
Okay.
So this is useful for, again, testing. Now, the master key, so this is kind of root access to the database. So if someone had this key, they can do anything with the database. They can read, they can delete anything. So, again, this is root access or super admin access to the database. So just so you guys are aware. And finally, there is also, if this database, and we already sort of covered this, is linked to an app for push notifications. So you're going to see it right here. Right? So this basically shows you that this database, and in particular the devices collection, right, is linked to an app which has push enabled. So this is what you get here. So as we're sort of on looking at the different options here, permissions, this is, again, if you have a team and you can invite your team members to, you can give them access to this database. And of course, the permissions tab is available on other resources as well. Versions is also very nice. It's a built-in conversioning, so you can create different versions of the app. So for example, version number 1, right? And you can add more versions, and then you can restore as well. So again, if you break something happens, you can always restore. And also quickly, just go back to settings. You can also duplicate the entire database. So a version is basically it's a copy that will be kept inside this database. A clone will create a completely new database. Okay, so that this option is also available. All right, now social connections, this is also very nice, is that if you want to build an app that has where you can do a login with Twitter, for example, login with Facebook, so you can actually do this here. You can add an app, and again, we support Facebook, Twitter, and Google. You just have to create an app on the social network side, very basic configuration, and then add links or buttons on the app, and then they'll be able to log in with, again, Twitter, Facebook, and, well, I'm forgetting what's the other one, Google. So, Google Plus. All right, so that's for the various settings here that you get. All right, so let's go back here. One other thing that's kind of interesting is the default ACL. So ACL stands for Access Control List, and this is how you add permissions for each row, for example. Now, if you have a user management feature built into your app, right, most likely when a user signs in, right, and that user creates a new object, right, only that user would have access to that object. So you would use ACL to do that. So in this particular example, I don't have any ACL at all, right? So there is no row security. But you can set ACL. And again, the default, when you open this for the first time, is going to look something like this. But then you have a couple of options. You can say that whenever a signed-in user creates an object, he or she by default will have read and write access. Okay. You can also say, for example, that maybe everyone else, maybe only they have only read access, right? And you can also then create set a particular user as well.
Oh, so
right?
It's very flexible.
It's very flexible. And of course, you can also do it programmatically from the app. When you create a new object, you can specify the ACL. But in many cases, the default ACL is sufficient, and that will make it a little bit simpler for you. So let's use this as an example, right? Let me save and close here. And again, it takes a little bit of time here in the message for the ACL to get updated. But I'm going to go back here, and let me get the session token. And this is the create service. All right, and you can see the ACL is set here. Now, one thing, and this is kind of a little bit tricky here, if you want to use a default ACL, you have to delete this ACL information, because if you don't delete this in the service, it will override the default values. So you get a flexibility, but you have to be a little bit careful, right? Because you can override the ACL, and you want to have this ability because depending on what's happening in the app.
Oh, okay.
So what you need to do is you need to delete this, and to do that, we just go here and delete this ACL information, and then go to headers. Let's add the token here, and we'll go to test, and we'll say maybe Slack, and let's right. So I just created a new object, and we can now go and see here, right? And you can see that now I have a new entry, and I have this ACL set, all right? And if I open it, you can see that this is actually, right, Alex is the owner, so Alex has read and write access, and then everyone else has only read access, all right? And again, so this star means all users, and you can see it says read, they can read, but write is false. And then this ID here, this is the Alex's ID, right? And then Alex in this case can read and write, all right? So this is how ACL works, and again, it allows you to have sort of permissions for a particular object. And again, in most cases, I think the default ACL will work, but again, you can override the ACL if you need to programmatically in the app. All right. What else? We've got a couple of minutes left, so I want to jump into showing you server code, and in particular, how to use the pointer. How do you link two collections together?
Okay. And server code was a feature, a backend feature we covered 2 webinars back.
Exactly. So the example here is that I have a users, right, and you keep the username, password. But again, in most cases, you're going to have a lot more information for the users, such as email, address, and so on, right? And you might want to keep it in a separate collection, like I have it right here, right? Where it says email and country in this case. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to actually delete Alex here, right? And let's open server code. All right. Now, again, what's really nice, there is a very nice integration between the database and the server code. And again, just to let you know, I mean, in case you didn't attend our webinar on server code allows you to write any custom logic using JavaScript on the server. And as part of this capability, we also provide an API to integrate with the database. Now, I have 2 scripts here. I have register and I have login. Let's look at the register one. All right. And so I can now, if I have a form in my app that allows me to register, right? I collect the username, the password, the email, and the country. And then what I do next is I register the user, and then I create the user profile, and I save the information there. Now, what's nice is that I can all do this inside one server code script, right? From the client perspective, this means that there's only one call from the client to the server, and then everything happens. If you were to use REST APIs directly to the database, you would need to send 3 requests to the server to accomplish this. So this is much better when you can do it via one one request. But just really quickly to show you how this works. Again, this first section, we collect the information, username, password, email, link pantry. What I do next is this code, you can see it's database user sign up. So this is where we register the user. Okay. This is just some debugging information, so this is not very important. What I do next is I create the user profile. I save the information into the user profile collection. And what I do next is I link the two. So I link the user's collection with the user profile. All right? And I mean, that's basically it, and then I just return the response. Now, how this works? Well, let's see how this works. What I have here is I have some information preset, right? That's Alex, his password, email, and the country. And when I click save and run, right, this is the response that I get, and then Alex is registered. And we can go to the database, right? So we can see that Alex registered. And then you can see there's a pointer, right, that points to user profile. Right here, we can see this information, all right? Mm-hmm. So, and again, within a single script, we registered the user, we saved the information into a separate collection, and then we linked the two collections.
Okay.
All in a single script, right? Which is, again, very nice. And again, much better than sending 3 requests from the client. On the login side, let's go to server code. Right, so when we log in, we would like to retrieve all the information from the profile collection as well, right? And so right here we have sample, and then by run, we a single server code script, we retrieve all the information. So again, what happens is I get the username and the password. I do a login right here, right? And then I retrieve the information. Okay, but again, the nice thing here is that instead of doing 2 requests from the client, I am able to do this via just a single request, and then I can, do a login and retrieve the data at once. And obviously, doing this stuff on the server is a lot faster and better than doing it from the client.
Right.
But again, the goal here is just to show you that there is a very nice integration between the server code and the database. And just in general, in most cases, it's recommended to work with the database even from the server code because, again, it's much better to add logic. It's also easier to update logic on the server than if you do it on the client. Because I can change this logic anytime without impacting the
So it's like an auto update feature in a way. It's a partial auto update.
Yeah, exactly. So, so that's how that's the integration. And again, to learn more about the other APIs that, again, definitely check out the Dev Center. There's API for database. There's information about data types, again, objects, queries, file API, and so on. And then the server code documentation page has database-specific API, right? How do you access the database via server code? So that's also available. All right? So that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. Let's go back here.
So I'm going to start moving on to the questions. Here's a quick question. Max, when you were talking about cloning, when you make a clone of the database, does it include the version history from before, or does the clone start from scratch in terms of the version history?
That's a good question. But we can maybe quickly even test this one and see if we get the cloning. So I have, if we go to versions, right? Let's create one more, right? Version number 2. And then if we go to settings, let's clone.
The scientific method.
Maybe 2. Let's see here. All right, so see the information here, and then versions. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's just like a fork, sort of. All right. Here's a question about a person is. I may not get this question right, but it's about the online offline. He's talking about the client SDK that we talk about on the. I think it's a Java SDK that we have for. It's in that section and under API Express. So the question is, can you also take the Appery database offline, online in the same way?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the SDK that in question, and then Charlie just mentioned. That's part of API Express. So absolutely. So you can build an offline app and use the Appery database for the offline app.
So the access is offline or online. It's the database itself is always.
So the database, the database is in the cloud, but then there is a JavaScript SDK that you get on the client where you can go offline, work with the app the same way, and when you go online, the changes will be automatically synced.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can. So with the SDK, you actually have a couple of options. Well, you can use a relational database, an external relational database for the offline, right, to build an offline app,
mm-hmm.
and the same exact way you can use the Appery.io database to get the offline app working.
Okay. Here's a question. So what's next for the feature itself, the database feature? Are there any plans and particular improvements that are on the roadmap about it?
For the database, we're looking. We might be adding. We need to look at our roadmap, but we're looking to add a few maybe other data types which we might not support. A more internal change that we're going to be upgrading the database version, the MongoDB version.
Oh, but you're sticking with MongoDB.
Yeah, to a newer version.
Oh, okay.
So, I think those are the main.
Oh, okay. It's kind of a mature feature now. So, I mean, you can.
In a lot of ways, yes.
So that raises a question: if this is a mature feature, what about other back-end features that might be available? Are there? Because we have push server code, and then there's the whole API Express thing that's kind of a back-end feature. So, are there any other new features that would be back-end features, or are we trying to build to shore up the foundation?
Yeah, we're trying to improve sort of our existing what we already have, because definitely making improving the existing capabilities, features, and integrations between different components. As for API Express, we are looking to add more components. For example, a component for connecting to Salesforce from API Express. Also a component that allows you to send push. So integration with the push,
mm-hmm.
Existing push. So also from the API Express, a database component. So when you build your custom service flow logic, right? So you can invoke different services. So it can be a relational database, it could be a REST API, it can be a database, it can be a push. So you'll be able to build a really advanced service logic using the visual editor and involve various platform components in it.
Okay.